Some of our politicians say that Islam now also belongs to Germany. That is worth taking a closer look. You can find the channel Iman TV on YouTube. According to their own statements, they offer entertaining and creative education about Islam. In this video, I would like to discuss now, however, I think they are a little too creative with the facts. I will only show a few segments from this video. The link is in the description in case you want to see it in full.
Also, Religionen lassen sich nicht beweisen. Das ist aber ganz klar.
Oh ja.
Das ist immer ein beweislos.
Oh ja.
Nein.
Oh ja.
Nein.
Ich gebe Ihnen ein Beispiel.
The man on the right in the picture is a Christian who takes the view that religions cannot be proven in principle. The Muslim on the left in the picture disagrees and wants to use an example to show you that he could very well prove that Islam is true.
Ich gebe Ihnen ein Beispiel. Wie ist entstanden diese Welt?
Ganz einfach. Also Urknall.
Urknall? Wunderbar, Urknall. Dann lesen wir her. Wenn ich Ihnen sage, eine in Sahara vor 1400 Jahren hat das gewusst. Werden Sie das glauben oder nicht?
He asks if we would believe that someone who lived in the Sahara 1400 years ago already knew about the Big Bang. Why does he talk about the Sahara? That is unclear to me, but I will explain the argument that he actually wants to make. It goes something like this. The Quran describes the Big Bang, and no one could have known about this fact 1400 years ago. Therefore, Allah, who is all-knowing, must have revealed this text.
Koran sagte, أَوَلَمْ يَرَ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا. Sehen die, das ist Allah spricht durch Muhammad, sehen die nicht die Kuffar, die Ungläubige, dass die Himmel und Erde waren die zusammen und Allah hat den Urknall. Nein, wenn ich mit Ihnen rede, müssen Sie aufnehmen. Ja? Vor 1400 Jahren Allah spricht zu uns durch den Koran, dass diese Welt war Urknall entstanden. Und jetzt haben die das entdeckt, das stimmt. Das kann nicht kommen von Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Das kann nicht von Prophet Muhammad, das ist von Offenbarung von Gott.
Muslims call this scientific miracles, and they are supposed to be proof for the religion of Islam. Surah 21, verse 30. This is the Quran verse that he speaks of, and that you can see on the left side in very small print in German. Here I show you 5 different English translations. I will read to you the relevant part here from the Hilali Khan translation. Have not those who disbelieve known that the heavens and the earth were joined together in one united piece, then we parted them. Oder hier nochmal die Übersetzung von Yusuf Ali. Do not the unbelievers see that the heavens and the earth were joined together as a unit of creation before we clove them asunder? The speaker in this text is Allah, who speaks of himself in the plural. He complains about the unbelievers, who do not want to believe, although they could see that heaven and earth were once together and that he separated them. So that is not exactly a representation of the Big Bang. Muslims argue like this. The verse says that heaven and earth, i.e. the components of the universe, used to be a single mass and then were separated from each other. It is important to note that the heavens supposedly stands for the universe. But you can also understand this text very differently. It simply reflects the ideas people had 1400 years ago about the creation of the world. The ancient Egyptians, for example, imagined the earth as the god Geb and the sky as the goddess Nut. The two were originally tightly hugging each other until Shu, the god of air, pressed himself between them and separated them from each other. This is the beginning of a tale of the Sumerians, Gilgamesh, Enkidu, and the underworld. It starts with, in those days, in those distant days. And it goes on in verse 8 and 9, when the heavens had been separated from the earth, when the earth had been delimited from the heavens. Muslims argue that it is not possible that Muhammad copied from the writings of the Egyptians or the Sumerians, and that their stories are completely different from the text of the Quran in the details. I agree. But I think that the idea of separation of heaven and earth was very widespread at the time of Muhammad. This is how people imagined the creation of the world at the time, and therefore it is written in the Quran without any divine revelation.
Aber Allah sagt es urknall. In der Koran, klar und präzise, urknall, Explosion.
There is absolutely nothing in the Quranic verse about an explosion, and certainly not clearly and precisely. It says heaven and earth have been separated from each other. There are all kinds of ways to separate something, but who would think of an explosion? Hardly anyone, except, of course, you are desperately trying to reconcile an ancient myth of creation with modern science. I ask myself whether this guy has no idea what is in the Quran, or if he is just lying to us. If you watch the whole video, you will see that the Christian also talks some nonsense. He tries to react spontaneously and has no ready-made answers. What the Muslim is bringing up here, on the other hand, is the standard repertoire of Muslim missionaries. With this video, I want to warn you against this kind of deception so that fewer people fall for it. Right at the beginning of the verse it says, "Do not the believers see?" Some Muslims write the following on the internet. Quote, "Disbelievers will see this, i.e., there will be observational evidence for this, and the verse's contents will be an argument for the belief in God and Islam." End quote. But there is no indication that this refers to the unbelievers in the distant future. This certainly meant the unbelievers and skeptics who were alive at the time when this text was written or created. They should supposedly be able to see or know that Allah has separated earth and the heavens. This also suggests that the separation of earth and heavens was generally recognized as a fact at the time and was considered common knowledge. The author of the Quran is referring to a concept that is well known to his contemporaries and wants to prove the greatness and omnipotence of Allah. Who could have separated earth and heaven if not the only and almighty God Allah? Unfortunately, I don't know Arabic, and I therefore need a translation. To find out whether I understand the text correctly, I like to read the commentaries on the Quran that have been made by great scholars of Islam. Al-Jalalain and Ibn Kathir are big names in this field. Al-Jalalain lived in the 15th century. This is his commentary on the verse we are discussing. Quote, "Have they not realized, have they not come to know, those who disbelieve, that the heavens and the earth were close together and then we parted them? We made 7 heavens and 7 earths." Or it is meant that the heaven was parted and began to rain, when it did not use to do so, and the earth was parted and began to produce plants, when it did not use to do so. End quote. The scholar Al-Jalalain did not read anything about an explosion in the Quranic verse. Rather, he understands that earth and heavens already existed as individual structures which were very close together and then were separated from one another. This is not a big bang. Ibn Kathir lived in the 14th century. I'll read to you some parts of his commentary. The whole text would be too long. Quote, "Have not those who disbelieve known," means those who deny his divine nature and worship others instead of him. "Do they not realize that Allah is the one who is independent in his powers of creation and is running the affairs of all things with absolute power? So how can it be appropriate to worship anything else beside him or to associate others in worship with him?" End quote. Please notice, as already mentioned, this is not about explaining the origin of the earth. that is assumed to be known by the people. The point is, how can the unbelievers deny Allah's divinity when His omnipotence is so evident? Let's go on with the text. Quote, "Do they not see that the heavens and the earth were joined together, i.e., in the beginning they were all one piece, attached to one another and piled up on top of one another? When He separated them from one another and made the heavens 7 and the earth 7, placing the air between the earth and the lowest heaven. Then He caused rain to fall from the sky and vegetation to grow from the earth." End quote. Then Ibn Kathir quotes some other Quran commentators. Quote, "The heavens and the earth were attached to one another. Then the heavens were raised up. The earth became separate from them. And this is their parting which was mentioned by Allah in His book. Al-Hasan and Qatada said, they were joined together, then they were separated by this air." End quote. So if the Big Bang and an explosion are clearly and precisely to be found in this Quranic verse, then I have to ask, why did these great scholars understand everything completely differently? Were they all fools? Probably not. Why should we read something into the text today that is simply not there? Many Muslims, however, will tell us that the Quran contains astonishing scientific facts that are only recently being confirmed by science, and that Muhammad could never have known 1,400 years ago in Mecca. It is only strange that, first, in all of these cases, the actual text in the Quran fits together much better with the ancient worldview than with modern science. And that, second, the Muslims only come up with these findings after the fact. I have never heard that Muslims put forward a scientific thesis based on the Quran, which is then actually confirmed later. That just never happens. Just a reminder, allegedly in the Quran there is something about the Big Bang, and when it speaks about the heavens, that means actually the universe. Great. Let's have a look at Quran Surah 41 verses 9 to 12. This is the translation by Pickthall. In verse 9 it says that Allah created the earth in 2 days. In verse 10 there is a closer description. In verse 11 it says, "Then He turned to the heaven when it was smoke, and said unto it and unto the earth, Come both of you willing or not? They said, We come obedient." Verse 12, "Then we ordained them 7 heavens in 2 days, and inspired in each heaven its mandate. And we decked the nether heaven with lamps, and rendered it inviolable." So, here the earth was finished first, with everything like mountains and even food. But the heavens, that is the universe, remember, were only smoke. And then Allah also completed them as 7 heavens and decorated the lowest heaven with lamps. If Allah is the author of the Quran, does He not know anymore in which order He created what? However, I could bet that someone will find hidden scientific evidence in this text as well. The video goes on. I'll deal with the second part the next time. That is about the sun and the moon. Over time, more and more Muslims are noticing that the scientific miracles in the Quran are not miracles and have nothing to do with science. This is often the first reason to doubt their religion. Many are leaving Islam, and therefore I dare to predict that Islam will sink into insignificance at the end of the 21st century.